He had faith that command will ensure his son's safe. However, a straightforward tune and the he demonstrated to the lady he nearly ruined wrong. No one ever liked Victor Langston pleasant surprises. The reason he invested tens of thousands with the most recent safety protocol, tiny hidden cameras in the recesses of his enormous Scottsdale house with glass walls, Sonora, Arizona. He believed that power was the whole thing. Full command over his company, command over his staff, and the majority, principally, authority over his dwelling. So, upon receiving a notification from using the security software later that day, he acted without delay. His finger brushed against the screen. There was a feed load. He first believed it. They were only carrying out their housekeeping duties' regular schedule. On the other hand, he became motionless. Situated smack dab in the center of the camera feed, perched in his sun-drenched living room, he had a maid named Danielle Brooks. She did not dust or hoover, in her clutching the hands of his crippled son, my child. While seated in his wheelchair, Ethan, a lean person wearing gray joggers and a frayed t-shirt, with his cock cocked towards, "Hey there, Danielle." Meanwhile, she was twirling steadily, softly, swaying his younger self to one side, as if enrolled in a classroom dance. A soft melody swelled under the backdrop, an unheard song by Victor over a period of decades. She was more than merely dancing, the joy came from the mirth. Despite he grinning, a genuine grin, the type of ever after the accident, Victor hadn't laid eyes on. Victor remained still, staring at the display. Whether he should be feeling furious, startled, or any other emotion preferred not to be named, he seemed to zoom in on anything may shed light on his situation seeing. A little spin later, Danielle was directing. The way Ethan's arms seemed to function fine. She was so happy that her face lit up appeared ill-suited for his house. Was not her responsibility, having no authority to go beyond such limits. The case of Victor tightened jaw as inquiries swarmed. Why did she reach out and touch his son without granted permission? Could she injure him? For what in the event that something went wrong and Ethan were to fall? Did something break? Not a single soul was meant to care for Ethan unless they are licensed therapists. They, too, were pressed for time. I felt his heart race. It was more than a mistake. The act was deceitful. He was entrusting her with the care of his son at home, and this is the action she took while nobody was looking, watching. His automobile keys were stolen by Victor. In the midst of the marble countertop, his phone transmitting the film. All progress made with each passing day, the door grew heavier. If the idea that Danielle could get away with just when she was ready to discover her own identity interacting with. However, Victor failed to be aware of was that this alleged error turned out to be more than simply damaged rules. The realities he never knew will be revealed, thought about. Instead of being merely well off, he embodied the type of gentleman who's had influence in executive suites, whole nation, having amassed one of the leading investment firms in technology, the Southwestern. His peers characterized him as cunning, brutal, and challenging. He was mirrored in the Scottsdale mansion, without a doubt, modern, sleek, and immaculate. A soundproof fortress constructed of glass and steel. It was everything for a reason, in every way instead of that. Violence was something Victor despised. His family's plight necessitated this. Long ago, in bygone days, the Langstons were dispersed. Charity events, holidays, front pages of magazines. What followed was what happened. After a rainstorm and after losing command of the Flagstaff, his wife's car sliding over wet pavement. Victims of the crash her at once. Ethan almost made it. The spinal cord injury was described by doctors as permanently altered state. After starting out as a spouse and paternal figure to an individual in the company of a crippled youngster, run out of steam, life has ran out of steam his intended beneficiary. Additionally, Victor was held responsible for on his own. By nightfall, he had vanished. It was spent time in California finalizing a transaction valued at $1 billion. Shame is never departed from his side, therefore he used his expertise. Manage everything. Healthcare providers, including therapists and nurses, personal chefs and housekeepers. Each and every employee took the same security measures as an official working for the president. He established rigid regulations. No interaction with Ethan that is not authorized outside dietary regimens. Discretionary individual relationships. As expected. Dear Victor, presumption that establishing rules would prevent again crumbling to pieces. Life was not improved superior, but it succeeded predictable. Next up was Ethan, a 16-year-old right now. For the most part, he stuck to his on a wheelchair, staring intently at an iPad or gazing out the enormous windows. It was never spoke to anybody, not even Victor. Ethan had a wild side before the tragedy, had a passion for basketball, music, and dancing where he and his mum were cooking. At last, his musk was obscure, engulfed in agony and quiet. It was like Victor was a magician. Cutting-edge treatment, experts in the field, as well as experimental therapies conducted elsewhere. It remained unchanged. At some point, Victor ceased attempting to rectify an improbable situation fixed, after persuading himself that it was preferred method. If he was unable to complete his son content, he might retain him safe. I mean, look at Danielle in that the video was like a slap in the face to him. Disregarding the regulations wasn't the only thing. The focus was on destroying the barrier he had constructed to shield Ethan from harm farther than that. However, Danielle Brooks, is that so? She had only been employed by him 6 months. She seemed ideal in theory. 32 age, excellent recommendations, a consistent background in housework, peaceful, respectful. Her lack of motivation was evident skepticism up until this point. Victor clutched the grip on the wheel firmly as his dark, departing from the desert, the Range Rover highway. The video was played again in his The Brain. She chuckles, Ethan grins, and that music, it was overly close and personal. There was a hint of it that spoke to him. For what her authority? Nevertheless, in some corner, somewhere in the recesses of his consciousness, he failed to, that Ethan liked to go to, was a recollection of his grin. He hadn't seen somebody with a genuine smile in years. It didn't bother him. Empties weren't matter. The rules applied. However, when Victor at last made it past those glass doors' windows, he was unprepared for the eagerly anticipating. A turning point that would propel all convictions of devotion, affection, and other opportunities. It wasn't Danielle Brooks like a person who may wind up in a house of a millionaire. This is not due to the fact that not at all professional. By the time she was plenty, but as there was no gave her uncomplicated respite. She was 32 years old when exuded demure power, a combination of people's kindness and resilience discerned without her making an effort. As she matured, situated in Jackson, Mississippi, the primary 4 younger brothers and sisters. 2 things about life, their things. Put in the time and effort, and keep caring. A nurse was her mother and a mechanic, and amid the divorce of her parents, Danielle assumed the role. Between her studies, side gigs including babysitting. Hence, their younger siblings were never hungry. I had no intention of going to college, but kindness that innately occurred. Upon arriving relocated to Arizona, intent on avoiding the limelight, just staying alive was the fight. Right after her fiancé went 2 years ago, abandoning her with expenses and emotional distress, Danielle starting all over. For her house cleaning tasks, stuck in truthful, respect her dignity, and distribute funds returning to one's hometown. Her arrival here was caused by that. The house of Victor Langston was unique outside of her previous employment. Remained quiet corridors and rooms that evoked a sense of the museum instead of living rooms. Moreover, thereafter, there was Ethan. The first time Danielle saw him, he barely looked up. 16 years old, handsome in a fragile way, with deep brown eyes that seemed to hold storms. His wheelchair sat in the corner like an anchor. "Hey there," she'd said softly, balancing a basket of folded towels. No response. Danielle wasn't the type to give up easy. Day after day, she greeted him with a smile. Sometimes she'd hum while cleaning shelves, trying not to notice when Ethan's gaze flicked toward her. She failed to push. She just stayed kind. Moreover, thereafter came the breakthrough. It occurred 2 months ago on a lovely afternoon. Danielle was cleaning around the great piano when her phone dropped from her apron. A song flowed forth. Beautiful day spent at This Is Bill Withers. Danielle hesitated, embarrassed. However, she was unable to seize. She picked up the phone. A delicate melody. It nearly slipped her mind. The sound of laughter. She did turn. With a smile on his face, Ethan looked around. A modest, crooked grin, yet genuine. "Are you a fan of this?" Her question. He gave a single nod. His previous response had been non-existent, for weeks to anybody. Afterwards, musical transformed into their coded language. Her role would be to, as I tidy things, an ancient spirit's music plays. As I saw his expression change in a manner couldn't get over. On a certain day, when there is nobody else was in the vicinity, so she proceeded to audacious, extended her palms and murmured, "Come on, let's feel this beat." Theodore was hesitant before he set his quivering hands intertwined. Danielle did a little swaying, directing him as the beat does what medicine was unable to. Just for a short while, he didn't receive treatment. Nothing had broken him. It was back to being a teenager. At these times did not involve violating regulations, for it was all about reclaiming Ethan, Danielle, an aspect of his existence. The world's most important himself had pilfered. However, at this moment, standing. When she sat in the light-filled living room, she was plagued by notion that her generosity was going unbridled on the way to Victor's cell. Has no clue who the dude is, exerted every effort to avoid disappointing towards him, enraged, prepared to rip her to shreds completely different. And as soon as Victor entered, he sounded agitated. A crack appeared. In the midst of a thunderous stillness, being pulled into a storm by Ethan and Danielle. Nobody anticipated this. Victor got behind the wheel of as if he were due answers by the road. The engine of the Range Rover rumbled in the extensive portion of Scottsdale Highway, emerging from the pavement in dazzling ocean currents. He firmly held onto the wheel, his knuckles turned white from the strain. With each blink, the picture once again. Ethan is being spun by Danielle, joyous laughter reverberating through his dwelling room. Rhythmic, gentle music coursing through the sound of distant speakers. In his son's delicate form, undergoing motions that never should. In what ways did the physicians express their concerns opposed to? Surprising, Victor whispered. In his head, putting more strain on the gas. Did this occur when he wasn't there? In the days when he put his faith in them? There was a purpose for rules. As for those regulations were penned in treacle and remorse. They born on the same night as he laid his wife to rest and vowed that it would never happen again, it takes place once more. Each and every carer, each cleaners were all familiar with his policies. Within the confines of established patterns, never take a chance. The trust was broken since Danielle was aware of it. When he hired her, he saw her serene expression. Her, always so kind, always ready to jump in, and that's correct. Her file had been double-checked by him. There were no issues. Now, however, he doubted all of it. The sand dunes breeze sped by the broken glass, but little did Victor know. He was fixated on, "My name is Ethan." Hurt him? Was the burden on her? Is it something? With only one misstep, he may finish up through agony for weeks, or even longer. It was slapped his hand on the wheel, frustratedly spin the wheel. Oh my goodness, how outrageous. His statements were more direct than he had hoped. Her home wasn't here. It was not she, my child. Still that grin. As a result, Ethan's smile tormented him just as much as the dance. Its importance. It had been a long time since he had seen that look. Unadulterated delight, compared to staring at the boy he knew in the past right up until the accident took them all. With clenched mouth, Victor swallowed forcefully. Such a thought would not cross his mind. I don't right now. Feelings were not a factor in any choice. In this way. The entrance to his manor arrived to the forefront. Then he hit the button on the remote, and iron bars of a dark hue slipped open like teeth, prepared to engulf him completely. Subgrade gravel crumbled beneath the SUV's wheels, winding their way up the lengthy driveway. The area around his heart became more firmly fastened with each wheel revolution. As soon as he pulled onto the driveway doorway, his heart pounded on his pork chops. Seizing his phone, he proceeded to play back the film for the final time. Face of Danielle displayed on the screen. Gently grinning, hair wrapped coming back, holding Ethan's hands as they turned slowly in a circle. Adolfo pushed when he took out his phone and put it in his pocket. He was blindsided by the scorching Arizona sun. Nevertheless, he was chillier than before on the inside. From the instant his sneakers landed on the houses tranquilly, the marble flooring bound him shackle style. From down the corridor, he could make out the faintest melody. Ongoing, a deep, moving tune trickling in a cozy manner. It seemed out of place in this tranquility structure. Voices the living room brought in. A delight in laughter, both Ethan's and Danielle's, gentle and toasty, like honey drizzled over pebbles. Victor was momentarily paralyzed. Something contorted inside him, an object he defied in order to identify. His posture became more upright, as he, with a controlled rage that weighed every step, and marched silently in the direction of the noise, seeing what shocked him to no end. Oh, look at them! Precisely as captured by the camera. Rather than radiant, with his cranium cocked towards among them, was Danielle, who swayed softly. They clasped hands in an unconscious gesture, assure you. A beam of sunlight streamed through the window panes, splattering paint on environment that resembled a painting. Victor was completely out of place in. Hey there, Danielle! He shattered the static with his voice, akin to a whip. Almost collapsing, she jerked. The floor, as the melody stutter-stepped to a halt when her phone fell out of her front pocket of the apron. When Ethan saw the abrupt hush, eyes flitting between those people. I was unable to hear you, Mr. Langston. Despite her quivering voice, she remained steadfast. As Victor advanced, every phrase dividing the room, those people. What are you up to? Danielle said, loosened her jaw and released a slur. At first. She looked away, her fingers wobbly as she clings to her apron. As his voice grew more elevated, he said, I was just what? In the midst of a tempest, jeopardizing my son's life at home following the very explicit regulations. In an effort to utter, his voice feeble. Grandpa, not at this moment. My name is Ethan. Victor paid him no mind at all, his gaze fixed on Danielle, a blazing inferno steaming up behind them. She gasped for air, that is, till a shift occurred. She did postured with a steely expression, feeling the strain. This isn't about consider, she said gently. Vic, chuckles bitter and brief. Is that so? Reason being that resulting from where I stand, it appears to be such as treachery. However, Danielle's proceeded to speak after her did more than simply defend her things to accomplish. They were able to unlock a door Victor had no idea existed. Furthermore, its foundation was an unprepared man for the reality. With her unwavering resolve, Danielle. There was trembling in her hands. The case of Victor, a dark figure resembling a danger, yet she declined to retreat. Worried, Ethan's gaze flitted between the two, shifting his gaze from his spectacles. Mister. With a low voice, Danielle started, Langston. Unwavering in spite of the shakiness in her chest. Explain it to me, please, please. Victor's voice pierced hers, asking, "What?" "Sharp as a knife. That you believed that the regulations didn't concern you? Might be able to freely use my sons because, exactly, you were uninterested?" She loosened her jaw and snapped. It closed once more. The heart rate of Danielle raced in fury, coursed up her back as she kissed her ears. "No, because your son needed it," he said, shouted out loudly. Blinking, Victor, her tone astounded me. The silence persisted. In such a way to him. "You believe I'm not? You have any idea what my son requires?" he retorted, going on by a further measure. His singing thundered across the marble room, reverberating off walls that had never registered even a single peep of outspoken for a long time. Throughout my and 500,000 on medical professionals, experts from throughout the nation. "What about you?" A finger he had poked at her internal organs. "Looks like you're a cleaner by trade. Do you not? Have the guts to tell me his requirements." "Hey there, Danielle," scrunched up yet remained intact. It's like "That's correct. It's not my speciality. The fact that I am not a clinician, but I am a compassionate individual sufficiently to meet his gaze. It is not his, rather than his invoices. That guy." Maximus's jaw painfully clenched. "Stop lecturing with regards to care. In all that I do, my whole possession is dedicated to Ethan." "Everything you own," she said, softly shimmering eyes. "That's not what he desires." The words were as sharp as a slap. Considering a moment, the room fell into utter quiet. Even a sense of tension pervaded the atmosphere. A perilous pitch descended into Victor's voice. "Calm. May I ask what you just said?" "Ethan spoke," she said, stood up, voice quivering. "Dad, I agree with her." Victor lunged in his direction. "Hey, Ethan, don't go on this." "No," though the youngster's voice quivered. "All Victor has never heard something so ear-piercing in months. You fail to comprehend. She accomplishes it makes me feel like my true self is still intact." The case of Victor. My jaw clenched. As if I don't want to. "Is that all?" As Ethan continued on, he was seated on. "You desire command, nobody but me, unlike my previous self, who found joy and twirled about the kitchen floor with Mum. It is your desire you were given by your physicians, but I despise it." A shard of glass was his voice. I despise this." In a moment, Victor was paralyzed. Expressions were ineffective to see him after a long period has passed. With a gentle voice, Danielle bowed down before Ethan. "Right now. That's why I danced with him," he said. Her gaze fixed on Victor's the whole time, for the simple reason that he wasn't broken. By no means was he a patient, being a young person whose deepest desire was to let themselves be moved by music yet again. Now Victor was breathing unevenly, angry and wanting to yell out for help, yet her remarks pricked him like painstakingly dense. Pictures appeared, his spouse whirling Ethan about in their former kitchen when he listened from his vantage point on the doorway. With deliberate steps, Danielle squared the weight of her head and shoulders. "When you're ready to let me go, just do it. Just don't tell me what I'm doing wrong." Perceived by him was not genuine. The case of Victor hands relaxed. His wrath failed to dissipate, but a more substantial component in reasons to doubt. Doubt had plagued him for a long-time enemy. At this point, it encircled him like linked systems. Victor in a first, eyes on Ethan. His chair was exempt, as were rather than the shattered pieces. The accident was his, my child. Compliance was not what he observed. That was agony. A need for something was driving it. Underneath the many regulations, Victor had hid. He turned aside, dragging both hands over his face. His chest heaved. For a long moment, no one said. Then Victor muttered, "Get out!" Danielle stiffened. "What?" "Get out!" he said louder, voice cracking like dried wood before I changed my mind about calling the cops. Ethan's shriek pierced the total stillness. "Dad, no!" Victor didn't turn. his back like a wall as he raced forward his research, leaving Ethan in tears, and a radiant sunbeam froze Danielle in place, felt icy all of a sudden. But Danielle still hadn't left, and the reality the burden she bore will lead Victor to his squatting before the evening wore on. Danielle refused to budge, at least not while Victor is involved. Resounding footfall reverberated through the corridor. It wasn't until the door to the study banged with sufficient force to tremble the glass panes. She breathed shallowly at times, from her fingers clenched so tightly that they formed in the palms of her hands. The voice of Ethan was the one to break the ice. "Hey there, Danielle," and his tears welled up in her eyes. "My apologies. I had doubts that he would." "No," she exclaimed, withholding a grin from the eyes. "You mustn't apologize. It was you that it's all right." She became more subdued, quivering body. "Not a single thing." In the corridor, Victor's voice resounded, but barely. Subterranean thunderous rumblings from behind shuttered access points. Doors slammed, and Danielle heard them. A large object slams against the floor. She did recognize that noise. Fury without a place to go. She had a strong want to depart, seize her backpack, and then turn around. Upon first look, however, she was held still by Ethan's quivering hands right there. Needing a combat partner, he in his favor. In all likelihood, nobody has done it previously, yet today she would. Just moments before to finally, Victor was back. He appeared pale-skinned with his tie pulled unfastened and his eyes blazing fossil fuels. One was resting on his palm. A crumpled, worn-out piece of paper edges, his gaze averted from her as he spoke. A low-volume voice said, "Why?" "Potentially harmful. For what purpose are you doing this? How much was it? Some heartbreaking tale that you were hoping would—" "Can you feel sorry for me?" She blinked in shock. "Danielle." "Excuse me?" A sharp, piercing stare erupted from Victor. To her. "Stay out of it." I dashed once more. "Your backdrop. Are you free of written content? Excessively neat?" I continued to dig farther. As he approached, the paper quivered. Inside his hold. "I saw that you left out 'You're my brother.'" Danielle was taken aback. From her experiencing a painful constriction of the chest. "If you trampled on my loved ones. I safeguard them. My son." Victor scowled. "So, what does that being fully informed about the individuals involved inside his sphere of influence? You omitted information that was false. Said you've never been interested in somebody who has a handicap in the past, but your sibling, auto collision, spinal cord injury, James Brooks, her knees hurt, and she passed away 2 years ago. Subsided ever so slightly, yet she managed to perch precariously on the sofa. Those cuts, unprocessed, shattered at the mere mention of music in honor of him. Tell me," Victor insisted, trembling as it struggles to support itself. "Say your genuine interest in this position." Words gnawed at Danielle's throat, their escape route. Reason being, I was unable to put he had. The subsequent quiet was more deafening than a shot fired. Suddenly her voice trembled, but the woman persisted. A powerful 25-year-old, James amusing, the ideal sibling one could want for because of. Later on, her voice became strained, glassy eyes. After a few drinks one night, a group of cars slammed into him. In an instant, the game shifted. He limped around, was unable to eat on his own, and on oath, I promised to support him. The palms of her hands quavered with fear as she clutched them close. Internal organs. I was unable to do enough. I kept up with his medical bills by working 2 jobs. I spent the night on his side, attempting to maintain his smile. "Also, you are aware what was said to me? I refuse to allow them, Danny. A specter. They can't have my music." She broke down in tears. It is now, scorching and relentless. Therefore, the moment he passed away due to a severe case of infection. If I ever laid eyes on someone, I would keep my word. Who is similar to him once again. Someone who is gradually disappearing. Regardless of the consequences, I would defy barriers and regulations in order to restore a portion of their lives to them, no matter how much it hurt. Dear Victor remained motionless, the crumbling paper in the wrist. The room was filled with Danielle's sobs, as if the surf were pounding on the coast, for during an extended period of time, his stronghold of doubt shattered. With deliberate slowness, he pivoted over to Ethan. The look on his son's face was one of pure joy. Through sobs, fiery eyes aglow with fierce. "Dad," Ethan said softly, in a circle. The hero said, "She saved me." Hard gulped, his chest sagging beneath the things he had been struggling with over an extended period of time, in his voice shattered like shards of glass. "My initial assumption was that I believed I was defending you." Rather than with a quiver in his voice, but strong. "You were trying to keep yourself safe." The fact that such words were true. All regulations, all walls, all imaging device. Nothing was reserved only for Ethan. Because of Victor's anxiety, shame, and incapable of meeting his son's gaze, without seeing the specter of a lady, he was unable to put money away. Vic's breath became labored at this point. With clenched hands, he let the paper slide across the room. For an instant, he merely gazed fixedly at Danielle, the lady whose courage he almost shattered when he dared to provide his kid something that Victor never would be able to. Joy. In the aftermath and internal, then he lost it. This time it's not out of wrath, but on the verge of capitulation. "Hey there, Danielle." He spoke with a very little sound. "My deepest apologies." From her wide eyes, a glimmer of bewilderment with her eyes watering, as he shifted his attention to Ethan, bringing them to eye level by kneeling. After a long period, his hands quaked with fear as he held his son's face close. "I have no idea what I'm doing," he murmured, her voice quivering. "This is what I desire, though, to give it a go if given the chance." Ethan declined express yourself. All he did was lean forward, taking a seat leaning on his father's shoulder, and just one action broke the final with the armor that Victor wore. In the distance, Danielle gently stroked her cheeks, her emotions racing, hammering with an object that had the sensation of hope. However, the evening had only just begun, and Victor still needed to make a choice that might alter the course of their existence indefinitely. A new vibe pervaded the space. Right now. It was previously encircled by the tension that, as if barbed wire had become into a stronger, less boisterous item. There was complete quiet, not enraged, but full with honesty. Kneeling beside Ethan, Victor remained there till the shaking of his son subsided. For after a 3-year hiatus, they finally did not stand on opposing walls. Victor stood up at last, and his expression was grief had etched pale, striated lines onto her skin. In the length of time. His gaze shifted to Danielle. For what seemed like an eternity, they gazed at one another. He resembled a guy who was clutching his control over 2 lives, one of which is for fear and the other for trust. "Remain here," Victor whispered. He had a raspy, removed from its typical steel form. "Hey there, Danielle," flinched in shock. "Excuse me? As I mentioned before, you shouldn't get out of here." He gasped for air. "My mistake about you in all matters." He briefly looked in the direction of Ethan before turning to face her again. "It was you that's something that eluded me." He was given a cause for joy once more. His neck, and I bridged for one instant before to the inscription, emerged unpolished and uncooked. No way I'll ever ignore them. Danielle refused to budge. The discontent remained dormant under her skin except for the tone he used. Whoever that was wasn't charged in, preparing to dismember her. It seemed as if this guy was speaking a normal language. She went against her, holding her breath as she did so. "I didn't feeling the need to offend you," she said, in silence. "I want to honor a commitment I made, on my own and to the person I cared about. Ethan merits more than regulations. He ought to existence." While gently nodding, Victor's eyes shimmering as tears did not fall. "Are you planning to sure?" It seems that the confession cost him save him immediately from any situation. It was stepped forward. Do not give me this. House won't seem stifling anymore. I don't in honor of Ethan. Dislike it. When you're at a prepared to remain, as more than simply employees, as someone who lends a hand, as we construct more desirable. Chest pain gripped Danielle. She did look for a trace of arrogance on his face and hubris, but found none. A simple guy exposed, frantic to be fair to the man's own son. At long last, she gave a nod. I'll remain, is one caveat, though. Roughly furrowed brows lifted. Please identify it. Missing cameras in places where Ethan resides, she said with conviction. Can you just trust him? Surveillance. Vic breathed out, nearly a chuckle, but it snapped with a less firm. Task completed. Slowly, Danielle released to unconsciousness while she held her breath. The corners were rounded that day, for the first parted her lips upward. Something snapped in Ethan's voice. In the midst of silence. Was it possible to play the song once more? While his speech was unsteady, it was packed. With relation to a topic they were both unaware of over a period of decades. Best wishes. With his eyes fixed on just for a moment, Danielle. Neither one budged. Afterwards, she retrieved her phone and started playing. After Bill Withers completed the fresh, luscious air once again, enveloping through the frigid marble chamber in a setting that appeared to be sunshine. At this point, when in an attempt to take Ethan's hands, Danielle Victor did nothing to halt her. He remained silent, ordering or listing hazards. He only stood standing by while he listened to his son wept quietly as she smiled. And in cases when Danielle glanced up, she beheld his broad grin as well, certainly not the fake grin he wore for corporate or non-profit galas, the actual deal, that which a man dons when he recalls how love feels. I didn't mean a flawless conclusion. Very seldom is life. Nevertheless, when in the chamber, 3 disturbed individuals began repairing their damage with music, faith, and the strength to release in dread. Well, I think that sums it up, isn't it? On sometimes the barriers we erect to safeguard ourselves and assume the role of shackles that prevent us from surviving. Love not under one's control. It takes place in brief periods, fragile, imperfect, human moments. If you were moved by this narrative, I have question. Which one item have you was trembling with fear, unable to lose? What would transpire if you permitted venture out a bit? Halt for a moment. Consider to this subject. And if the point made an impression, consider sharing this video with someone who might have it. Simply said, there are moments when a just one option, the decision to